Hey everyone, welcome back. For today's media literacy class, we're stepping into the shoes of disinformation researchers to analyze exactly how modern digital ecosystems are being manipulated. We're going to look at some truly fascinating and, frankly, kind of surreal research on how long-term shifts in public opinion are being engineered right under our noses. This explainer is going to fundamentally change how you look at the memes in your feed. To start, researchers point to a very specific, totally wild video. Picture this. It features a Lego version of Donald Trump, the devil, and Benjamin Netanyahu flipping through the Epstein files. Then, it suddenly cuts to them detonating U.S. missiles that cause school buildings to collapse. That's actually a direct reference to the MENAB school strike, an event thought to have killed over 100 civilians. The imagery is totally chaotic, it's absurd, and it looks like it belongs deep, deep on TikTok. Definitely not on any official state television broadcast. And yet, this was a piece of viral Iranian propaganda that racked up millions of views. Okay, let's dive into this, because this right here is our core research question for today. Why would a state government invest time and money into producing content that looks like bizarre internet slop? Normally, we associate state propaganda with really serious press conferences, military parades, or highly produced television broadcasts. So why pivot to AI-generated Legos? To answer that, here is our research brief for today's explainer. First, the Lego puzzle. Second, the Gen Z aesthetic. Third, bypassing defenses. Fourth, the 10-year game. And finally, aesthetic collapse. Section 1. The Lego propaganda puzzle. We really need to understand a fundamental shift in how modern propaganda operates in the digital age. For decades, we've always worried about propaganda trying to convince us of lies, right? But according to Peter Benzoni, a senior research manager at the Institute for Strategic Dialogue, who actually tracks these disinformation campaigns, the goal has entirely changed. The battle is literally no longer over the truth, it's a battle for your attention. The new objective is just to capture your focus and shape how you feel before you even have the time to think and decide. It's all about getting your eyeballs on their content in an incredibly crowded digital space. Section 2. The Gen Z Aesthetic Register. To understand exactly how they capture that attention, we need to look at who this content is targeting and the specific packaging they're using. This propaganda is squarely aimed at internet natives. We're talking Gen Z, Millennials, Gen Alpha. These are demographics that consume tons of memes and completely absurd AI-generated content on a daily basis. The goal of using these formats isn't to immediately change your mind about complex geopolitics. No, it's to build positive subconscious associations. They want to associate Iran with entertainment, with fun, and a sense of justification, leveraging universally recognized cultural objects, like Legos, to make the content instantly digestible. This brings us to a really crucial academic term for our media literacy toolkit, the aesthetic register. This just refers to the stylistic format of the media, whether that's a meme, an AI video, or a cinematic trailer, that subconsciously tells the viewer how they should consume it. Familiar formats fundamentally alter how our brains process information. Think about it. When you see a meme, your brain immediately categorizes it as entertainment, not as a serious news source that needs to be scrutinized. And this brilliantly illustrates how powerful the aesthetic register is. In one of the viral clips analyzed by researchers, the propaganda was actually set to a trap beat. The music itself was giving the audience instructions. Consume this like a Kendrick Lamar versus Drake rap beef. It completely frames a serious geopolitical conflict as a cultural rivalry. In another video, they used this massive cinematic score, basically telling the viewer to consume the content like they're watching Star Wars, clearly defining a plucky good guy and a big, evil empire. The medium itself is the message. Section 3. Bypassing our critical defenses. Now, let's examine the psychological mechanism at play to understand how these aesthetics completely neutralize our standard media literacy skills. Think about your own daily habits. When you read a traditional news article, you might stop and ask, is this true? Who's saying this? What are their motivations here? But when you're just scrolling and laughing at a meme or watching AI brain rot, literally none of us are asking those critical journalistic questions. Because the aesthetic register tells us it's just a joke, our critical defenses are totally lowered. We absorb the messaging without applying any scrutiny whatsoever. Furthermore, the propaganda is highly modular. It's like a giant puzzle with multiple standalone pieces of messaging designed to catch completely different viewers. For example, an American teenager might look at that Lego video and totally reject the absurd equation of Trump to Satan. But they might emotionally resonate with the visuals of the MENAB school strike and the tragic loss of civilian lives. You don't have to buy the whole package. The creator only needs one single modular element to emotionally register with you. Let's move to and see how this builds into a highly effective distribution pipeline. Step 1. Hook the viewer with a deeply familiar, non-threatening object, like a Lego. Step 2. Use a modular message to resonate emotionally with the viewer's sense of justice or their sense of humor. Step 3. Prompt and action. The viewer enjoys it, reposts it, and sends it directly to their group chat. Just like that, state media has suddenly bypassed all traditional defense mechanisms and landed right in a teenager's private messages. Section 4. The 10-year influence gain. Let's zoom out as researchers to evaluate the long-term strategic objective of this massive digital campaign. It is absolutely crucial to understand that the goal isn't to start a revolution tomorrow or to immediately stop a war today. As Peter Benzoni outlines, the objective is to slowly, through repeated usage, change the geopolitical associations a whole generation has. The state is trying to reposition itself away from the image of a rigid authoritarian regime and instead rebrand as a fun little guy who is defiantly standing up to the class principle. This is entirely a generational timeline. We are looking at the present day, where these memes and AI videos are just planting seeds. But project this 5 to 10 years down the line, when millennials and Gen Z begin to assume real political power and influence. If these positive associations take root, researchers warn we could see a massive sea change in public opinion and a completely altered geopolitical reality. Now, what's really interesting about this setup is the decentralized supply chain of the propaganda. The regime might commission the initial video through a small animation studio in Tehran. It plays on state media. But from there, it's handed off to paid proxies, and eventually organic fans on the wild internet. These users break it down into smaller bits, they remix it, and they do their own memes right on top of it. The original source becomes entirely obscured, making the messaging incredibly resilient and practically impossible to track. It's worth briefly contrasting this with how other entities use memes. The US White House, for instance, also dips its toes into internet absurdity. But impartially speaking, they are fighting entirely different battles. When the White House uses memes, they're largely preaching to an audience of people who already support them. The Iranian strategy, however, is this massive, expansive effort aimed at winning the hearts and minds of a huge global audience. Section 5. Hypocrisy and Aesthetic Collapse. For our final section, we need to analyze the inherent fragility and the massive vulnerabilities hidden within this digital facade. Researchers highlight a stark hypocrisy right at the heart of this strategy. On the international internet, the state presents an online facade as the lovable class clown, heavily using TikTok aesthetics to charm Western teenagers. But the real-world reality is that this same state is a theocracy that has severely punished and arrested its own citizens simply for doing TikTok dances within its borders. This hypocrisy makes the entire propaganda strategy incredibly fragile. Real-world atrocities pose an immediate threat to this carefully crafted aesthetic. Researchers point to the Masa Amini moment, where a woman was executed over a hijab as the ultimate vulnerability. When brutal, undeniable realities of domestic repression break into the global news cycle, the cute, meme-friendly aesthetic shatters instantly. As Benzoni notes, you simply cannot be the internet's lovable class clown while acting as an authoritarian state killing its own citizens. The entire strategy completely depends on maintaining the illusion of the plucky underdog. When faced with stark reality, the decentralized meme network cannot protect the regime from global outrage, and the aesthetic collapses overnight. Which leaves us with a critical question to end our class today. As these tactics become cheaper and quicker, are we prepared for an internet where the medium, the meme, the trap beat, the AI Lego, entirely masks the messenger and their true intentions? Keep that in mind the next time something totally absurd drops into your group chat. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and make sure you keep your critical defenses up.